when I was working with the Secret Service and screwing them over, one of our targets was this gentleman by the name of Daniel Rigmaiden. I taught Daniel Rigmaiden how to commit tax return identity theft. He goes on to be very prolific about it, and he's caught by the feds used back then they called it triggerfish. Today they call it Stingray. It's this cell phone spoofing device that can locate you within a 7-foot radius. All right, so they find him by that. Daniel was looking at several years in prison. Daniel fires his lawyers. He becomes his own attorney. He serves lots of time in a county jail defending himself. He files hundreds, if not a couple of thousand, of FOIA requests. In one of these FOIA requests, it mentions a cell phone spoofing device, which is what was used to identify him, to locate him. Once he sees that, he understands that the feds, they don't want any information at all about Stingray devices being released to the public. So he comes to court with that. Prosecution sees that and they say, hey, if you'll go ahead and plead guilty, we'll cut you out right now. He does, and he walks out. That was what happened with Daniel Rigmaiden. So I just wanted the listeners to know what was going on with Daniel at that point in time.
And so they cut him out because essentially, in legal terms, it's not exactly blackmail, it's gray mail.
Right.
It is saying, I'm going to release out into the world this information you don't want to release. And I'm not as important. My sentence is not as important as the fact that you need to keep that private.
Right.
So it's a weighing of the secrecy versus that. So the Classified Information Procedures Act is designed to keep defendants from using the disclosure of that secret to, leverage for their freedom is what it amounts to, or reduce sentence or what have you. So where in Ilya Lichtenstein, in that set of facts, the one thing that's glossed over is breaking that encryption.
Right.
Now, we both know that it could have been that they could have said that they broke the encryption, but what they really got him to do was to talk. Right. It could have been, maybe it was just a, 8-character password that, they put through, just some off the shelf password cracker and got it. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, that was the only thing that I saw was that whole thing about how they got into that cloud account.
Right.
And the encryption involving that cloud account and whether or not there was something in there that could have been classified. Otherwise, the only other thing that would have been possibly Eugene. Right. And, listen, one thing we haven't gotten into, we did a couple of years ago, was the fact of the 25,000 Bitcoin. So the hack happens in 120,000. Well, okay, so it was what? 119,754 Bitcoin. Okay. So you do the numbers, and what gets peeled off of that are 25.
Right.
In round numbers, that's 20%. It's 20.8%.
Okay.
So, in round numbers, it's just 20%, What
happened to that 20%? It sounds to me like you owe some son of a bitch his part.
Sounds like a cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we were kind of talking about a couple of years ago.
Right.
Sounds like a cut to me. And otherwise, why wouldn't they have started to peel off all of the rest of the Bitcoin rather than leaving them in a single wallet to be,
you're right.
To be taken eventually.
Right. So you pay some SOB his cut for something, allowing access in. Maybe he was a collaborator. Maybe Eugene in his past, had helped out with a breach, that Bitfinex breach, and that was part of what was supposed to go to whoever at that point. But you're absolutely right. That 20% which is what it is, that 20% absolutely sounds like you owe somebody their cut. And for those crypto people out there, I understand you got that whale wallet. I got it. All right. You got that whale wallet that's got a couple 100,000 Bitcoins. You don't want all the Bitcoins left in that one wallet in case some son of a bitch comes in and gains access to that wallet. You want to break it up. But here's the thing. They didn't break it up. They took 20% out as a payment to something, for something. Now, I don't know what that is. And I mean, we can sit here and talk about that, but you're bringing up a couple of really important points here. SEPA. So either it's the way they access that cloud account, which is questionable because I don't think there's really a whole lot of secrecy there. I think that Ilya, his dumbass, had something written down or it was his personal cloud account. Once they identified him from Coinbase, they were able to contact Microsoft and say, hey, does this son of a bitch have a cloud account? And they're like, yeah, well, look, it's right here. So I don't think that's the SEPA. I think that if you're looking at it, I think it to me, that Occam's razor thing, I think the most logical, most likely scenario is that Eugene is the reason that we had SEPA, the Classified Information Act, why we had that take place in the Ilya Lichtenstein Bitfinex money laundering thing.